Justified, my sins forgiven. Sanctified, I've got a new beginning. Now I'm a stranger here, I'm just a passing through.
Auntie Amanda will elaborate on the specials on the day, but all I know is that this day is special for the children and those who are still children at heart. So if you are still a child at heart, do not despair. This day is special for you as well. And so let us be blessed.
Are we happy to be here? Yes. I was just about to sing a song because, I'm so used to talking to children. Okay, so today's day is, it's a Children's Day. It's a day that has been set aside for orphans and vulnerable children. It's actually a day that is on the GC calendar. It's not something that we've just thought about and said, as Vince and Chef, maybe let's just have someone preaching for the children. It's actually a day that is set aside by the General Conference of the Seventh-day Adventists. It's a day that commemorates the children. And especially today, we're looking at orphans and vulnerable children. Do we know what orphans are? So, young children without parents are orphans. What about our parents without their parents? Are they also orphans? What about vulnerable children? What are vulnerable children? Children who are in vulnerable situations, right? We have children who are in war-torn areas. We have children who are sick. We have children who cannot even afford to go to school. They cannot even afford to go to hospital, whether their parents are there or not there. So the title for today is Forgive and Be Free. So as children, as orphans or vulnerable children, even as adults, there are times when somebody does something to you, when somebody offends you in a way that you get hurt. You are so hurt that you can't forgive that person. But today we want to learn. So we're going to start with an experiment. Things that we find every day in our house. In most of our houses. He's going to hold the dish. Okay, this is a Ziploc bag. I couldn't find one that's big. The one that I had is too big, so the experiment will not work. So this is water. It was meant to be warm water. I don't know if it's still warm. We put a little bit of warm water and then a little bit of vinegar. And then this is bicarbonate of soda. So we put a teaspoon of bicarbonate of soda in the water with vinegar. Can you see what's happening? Did you see what happened? There was an explosion, right? That's the same thing with us. Told in anger. We'll reach a point where we will explode. So today we want to talk about forgiveness. They're coming from when we were children, that we have built up, the anger that we have still bottled up in us. One day we will explode if we do not forgive. Why should we forgive? What does the Bible say to us about forgiveness? We must forgive because the Bible asks us to forgive. We must forgive because Jesus also asks us to forgive. Let us read Matthew 6, verse 14. We are not saints, right? We also do some things that will anger other people. So we need to forgive, because if we forgive, God will also forgive us. Let us read Ephesians 4, verse 32. Ephesians 4, verse 32. To be kind people and forgiving one another. Let us read again Colossians 3, verse 18. Tell us to forgive one another. It continues to tell us that we must forgive others because God has forgiven us and God will continue to forgive us. Let's talk about a young man from the Bible, what teaches us about forgiveness. His story is found in Genesis chapter 37. It's actually from Genesis chapter 37, from verse 12 going onwards. That one you can read when you get home. I'm just going to summarize what it's about. There was a boy whose name was Joseph. Joseph was his father's favorite son. His father was Jacob. So his father loved him so much that he made him a special coat. It was a jacket that had many colors. And Joseph used to have visions, he would have dreams. One day, he dreamt that his brothers would bow down to him and worship him. And when he told his brothers about this dream, that dream angered his brothers. So they plotted that this young man, he just wants to disrespect us. How can he say that we are going to bow down to him? This young man, a young boy, how can he say such vile things? And then they felt disrespected, his elder brothers. So they plotted in their hearts what they wanted to do to him. So when his father said, then there was a time when the brothers used to go away with their goats, with their sheep. And then Jacob sent Joseph to go to visit his brothers to bring them food. And so the brothers, when they saw him coming, then they said, oh, look, there's the dreamer. The dreamer cometh. And they were filled with so much rage. They were jealous of him and the things that he was already destined for greatness. And they were jealous of him. And then they plotted and they were angry. And then they decided to sell him. The other brothers said, no, let's just kill him. Let's throw him in a pit. And then we'll say, and a wild animal ate him. And then the other brother was like, no, but we can't really do that. What about, let's just sell him. So they sold him off to the traders. And then the traders took him to Egypt. That Joseph enjoyed so much suffering and pain from his family, from his immediate brothers. Imagine what more, like the pain that we also endure from our family, the pain that we endure from our friends. We, as adults, there are some people who have been abused. Suppose your parents passed away, and then you were left in the custody of your uncles. They took all the things that your parents had, the riches that the parents had. Instead of you benefiting from those things, they decided to take their children to school at your expense. That also harbors anger within you. You are still angry at them. How could they do this to me? They should have, the people who are supposed to protect you are the people who are hurting you. But the Bible tells us to forgive. Joseph was sold. Those traders then took Joseph and sold him to Potiphar. In Potiphar's house, he thought, maybe this is an escape. I'm going to be happy. Then Potiphar's wife wrongly accuses him of something that he didn't do. Then he was also thrown into prison. And when he was thrown into prison, because he was destined for greatness, God continued to work through him. He then interpreted the dream of the cupbearer, and he asked the cupbearer to remember him when he was released. And for sure, the cupbearer was released. But then, did the cupbearer remember Joseph? He did not. He left him in prison. He was cupbearer, and he spent years in prison. Joseph must have been very disappointed, but he continued to trust God, that God had a different plan for his life. After some time, Joseph was finally released from prison. And guess what? His dreams now start to manifest. His dreams now start to come through. Genesis 39, verse 1. And Joseph was brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, bought him of the hands of the Ishmaelites, which had brought him thither. And the Lord was with Joseph, and he was a prosperous man. And the Lord was with Joseph. So did God forget Joseph? Did God forget Joseph? Despite all the bad things that were happening to him, God did not forget Joseph. After Joseph was released from prison, he became a second in command from the Pharaoh. Then he was the one who was in charge of the grains. He was like the minister of agriculture, for instance. So when there was a famine in Israel, the brothers said, maybe if we go to Egypt, we will get something. And guess who they saw? His brothers came to Egypt to buy food during the famine. and they saw Joseph. The brothers now bowed down to Joseph. That dream that he had when he was young, it was now coming true. 1 Peter 3 verse 9. It says, for the children to understand, do not repay evil with evil or insult with insult. Joseph could have easily said to his brothers, no, we don't have food for you, go back to Israel. But he, for the sake of his father, and because God had a plan in him, he then gave his brothers food, and the brothers were satisfied, and they had to bring his young brother. We all know the story. But Joseph was now in a position of influence. He could have repaid the bad things that the brothers were doing to him, but he did not do that. Forgiveness is a choice. We need to choose to forgive today. When you forgive, you set yourself free. When the pain of harboring hurt in your shoulders, it's heavy. Have you noticed that? It's heavy. When someone has done something to you, and then you actually see them in a nice day, you'll be like, how come? You know, and it's heavy on you. You need to forgive. Forgiveness is a choice. We need to forgive so that we are set free. Joseph chose to forgive his brothers, just as God wanted him. God chooses to forgive us when we ask him because he loves us. The 3 C's of forgiveness. The first C is confession. Admit that we were angry and bitter towards someone and that we can't forgive on our own strength. We need to get to a point where we admit that we cannot forgive by ourselves. We need to ask God to help us. 1 John chapter 1 verse 19. For us to confess our sins, he is ready to forgive us. The second C is conversion. Let God change our hearts to become loving and forgiving. We cannot change the past, nor can we forget the things that happened in the past. We need the strength from God. We need God to convert our hearts so that we can be able to forgive. Philippians 4 verse 18 says, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. So we need to ask God to convert us, and we need to ask for strength from God to help us to forgive. And the third C is celebration. We need to release the feelings of resentment or vengeance towards those who hurt us. Let go of your anger and be free to love again. When we let go of our anger, we will be free. When we are free from the prison of unforgiveness, we will have the freedom to love God and to love others. So may God help us today to forgive. Let us remember, forgiveness is a choice. Let us forgive for us to be free. May God help us.
Amen. Says, therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice. You have all the passage that have been read. God is saying, therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man. If you forgive, you are like that wise man who built his house on the rock. Verse 25. The rain came down, and the streams rose, and the wind blew and beat against the house. Yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice, what is he like? Like a foolish man. So after talking about forgiveness, and if we do not put it into practice, we are like this foolish man. What did he do? He built a house on sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house. What was the result? And it fell with a great crash. This is exactly what happened when we harbor anger, when we harbor unforgiveness. When the rains come and the winds come, your house will fall with a great crash. You see, this passage of the wise, of these two builders, it's very easy to just read this passage and move on. But let's just pretend we haven't heard this story before, this parable before. Now, if you look at Jesus Christ from all the passages that have been read by the previous preacher, Jesus used day-to-day experiences of his hearers. And in this particular case, he's right there, close to the Lake of Galilee. It's also known as the Sea of Canaan, so the Lake of Gennesaret. It's got many names during its existence. By the shores of this Sea of Galilee, in Bethesda, there's that is the birthplace of Philip, Andrew, and Peter. There's a type of sand that in the summertime was very hard. Like a rock. So let's imagine that we have two builders. Okay, let's give them names. Let's say we've got two builders, just like in our story here. And I'm going to give those two builders two names. We've got Jacob. So Jacob thinks that this alluvial of sand feels like a rock. Because in the summertime, this alluvial sand by the Sea of Galilee, it's quite hard. So he's convinced that it's a good foundation to build on. So he builds his house on this sand without building a foundation. After all, it's hard enough. But we have also another builder. Let's call him Isaac. Now he has done his research. He digs a foundation right down to the bedrock. In the summer, it's fine. They both enjoy their home. But then the early rains come and the winter rains come and the Jordan River overflows its banks. Now the problem is, in winter, there are windstorms around this region. This caused the house that had been built straight on the sand without a foundation to collapse. And Jacob is homeless, while Isaac's house stands. Anyway, if this is the background to Jesus' parable, then the issue isn't where the houses were built, whether they were built on sand or on rock, because they were both built on this hard sand during the summer months. Now, the important point here said is how these houses were built. Did they have a foundation dug down to the bedrock? Isaac was wise. Isaac, in our illustration, he was wise. He ignored the fact that the weather was good. He didn't allow that to lull him into a false sense of security. He knew the rain would come, that the Jordan River would overflow its banks, which would loosen up the hard sand and make it unstable. He knew that without a foundation, the house would collapse. So he puts in the time, effort, and energy to build a strong foundation. Jacob, in our illustration, he wasn't wise. He only thought that the present, he just talked about the present, and thought the hard sand would stay that way throughout the winter. Not bothering with the foundation, he finished his house much sooner than Isaac. And he enjoyed watching him slogging his guts out through those hot summer days. But it was Isaac with the last laugh. He used this parable of the wise and foolish builder as the conclusion of his sermon to issue a clear warning. You've heard my words. All you have, he said, you're all in that boat. The difference, friends, is whether you've put my words into practice. This is what Jesus Christ is saying here. Have you acted on my words? Christ is saying, I don't want you to just hear me. I want you to obey. So when you talk about forgiveness, it's not just about speaking. Christ is saying, obey. What his first bearers would probably have had behind the dramatic picture language. Not far away from where he sat on that hillside, just 100 miles or so away in Jerusalem. Whilst this is happening, Herod's men will continue to rebuild the temple. They spoke of it as God's house and declared that it was built upon the rock. Proof against wind and weather. In the last great sermon he made to the Jesus warns that even that temple itself will come crashing down Because Israel, as a whole, it failed to respond to his message. The very same message Christ is bringing us today. Once we see this larger picture, we can see more clearly what Matthew wants us to pick up here. If we build our lives on Jesus' teaching to be part of the house, that lasts forever. But it became as a very specific promise and warning his own people in his own day. Much of Jesus' teaching is like that. We often discover more of what it means for us by discovering more of what it meant very specifically to them. Friends, in conclusion, what sort of houses are we building today? Then, in our own lives, even in our own churches, are we building houses whose foundation is unforgiveness? Is that what we're doing? Are we doing Jesus' words, or only reading them, hearing them, and thinking how fine they are? Friends, let's us forgive. Amen.